everyone, this is Tricia McCannon. Welcome to our third installment in a series on whole brain thinking. And I've actually been so impressed by this concept of whole brain thinking that I've decided to set up something called the Gnosis Learning Institute, where we begin to teach people to use both the left and the right sides of the brain. And of course, if we did this with our grammar school kids and our junior high and high school students, imagine what a different world we would have. Because we would not only be, have a good structure, a good plan, a good infrastructure, but we would also be creative, we would be empathetic, we would be dealing with the connectivity and the oneness of consciousness on this global planet that we live on. And so certainly that would be a preferred way to me of living in a holistic way that honors life in every form and doesn't see ourselves as the master of the universe or separate from one another, from our relationships, and from the beautiful world in which we live. So whole brain thinking, surprisingly, even though they didn't call it that, was taught at the core level of the ancient mystery schools. And as many of you know, I speak about the ancient mysteries. But if we go back in time to the time of Jesus, he taught something called the way. Even further back in time was Buddha, where he taught the middle way. And even further back was the god of wisdom in ancient Egypt, whose name was Thoth or Tahuti, and he taught the sacred way or the ancient way. What is this way that they're talking about? Wow, well, this has to do with whole brain thinking. And if we start looking at the modern aspects that we have that come from the ancient past, we can see it in something as beautiful and rich and varied as the Jewish Kabbalah. The Jewish Kabbalah, if you're familiar with it, actually has three paths. The left side, the feminine, the right side, the masculine, and the path right up the middle, the center path that teaches the way, which is the balance between the masculine and the feminine. And so while this all seems kind of, let us say, philosophical or esoteric, there's a great deal to say about the tree of life and this process of inner mastery and wisdom. And if you don't think in terms of mastery and wisdom, it's fine. Just think of it in terms of practical balance and being able to access more of who you are that you can bring forward in your life to create a more loving, joyous, productive, abundant, connected life. That's an easy way of thinking of it. So for the ancients in the mystery schools, however, they were really talking about making a connection with the left and right hemispheres through this interconnected corpus callosum. And the corpus callosum is a very large white sheath. It's about this wide that connects both hemispheres of the brain, particularly the cerebral or the thinking hemispheres. Now, many of you may know that we sort of have a triune brain. We have a reptilian brain, that was the primitive brain. We have a limbic brain, that's the emotional brain, and we have a cerebral brain, that's the decision-making logical brain. The reptilian brain, unfortunately, is sort of like where a lot of people live. It's a survival brain, okay? And many people are living in conditions of survival. Where is the next meal coming from? Can they get a roof over their head? But at another level, we can say that the reptilian brain deals with is the 4 F's: feeding, fornicating, fighting, and fleeing. This was a brain that developed at the time of the dinosaurs, when these large Tyrannosaurus rexes were running after us. And so it was like head for the hills or pick up your sticks and fight for survival. So this is a survival brain that helps us to physically survive in the world. But if you're just living on that level, you wind up not getting very evolved. You really haven't tapped into much more than your primitive self. The limbic brain, which is connected with the temporal aspects of the brain, the two sides of the brain, is our emotional brain. It's our ability to really connect with people. But of course, if we only have the masculine side turned on, that connection is more of a mental connection. When we turn on the feminine side, it's more of an empathetic connection, allowing for things like intelligent listening and better communication and connectivity and emotional intelligence, creative problem solving, better teamwork. There are many very practical uses of this feminine brain. And when you apply that, and the masculine brain helps the feminine brain, it can create beautiful structures that are out-of-the-box thinking and create basically genius thinking. Now, genius thinking is where we begin to think equally with both sides of the brain. And this is where some of the greatest inventions in the world have come through. And it's the ability to access actually not only these two practical sides, but this ability to connect in the middle, truly connect with something that's called the pineal gland, which lies right at the center of the skull, right back from this center point, or the bindu point as the Hindus call it, or the third eye, the teaser till, there are different names for it. But it allows us to begin to open up our imaginative inner visions and to actually connect with our higher selves. So you can use it at a practical level. You don't have to be metaphysical, you don't have to be religious or spiritual in what you think of yourself to use it. But as you begin to develop this, it can give you access into the creative realms, into the spiritual realms, into the higher realms. And this is part of what the mystery schools were really designed for, was to remind us that we are eternal souls. We're having a physical experience here in the physical third dimensional world. It's kind of like a classroom. It's a schoolroom. How we do is totally up to us. Of course, we have lots of challenges that come our way throughout our entire life, and how we rise to meet them is like taking the test. And when we die and we graduate, at least according to thousands, if not millions actually, of near-death experiencers, we go to the other side, we meet a being of light, and we get to see how we did in each given lifetime. So wouldn't you like to run 100% of your life on more of your brain, allowing you to access this higher knowledge? This is what the mystery schools were ultimately teaching people to do. And from the point of view of, let us say, spirituality, this is what Jesus also was teaching. In the Gospel of Thomas, he teaches that when you make the two eyes into one, the inner into the outer into the inner, the male into the female, and the female into the male, then you shall see the kingdom of heaven. He was giving us a spiritual technology in his teachings for beginning to balance ourselves, our emotions, our minds, our physical self, and our spiritual self, our logical self, and our creative self. And if you're interested in knowing more about these subjects, I'm in the process of writing some new books about them, and I'll have some wonderful things on my website, TriciaMcCannonSpeaks.com, and eventually the Gnosis Learning Institute will have its very own website, and you'll be able to check in on that and be able to maybe buy some books that will really teach you more of these amazing exercises that can not only help you to live a balanced life, but also help those you love who may have fallen or be in trouble in some way. Thank you so very much for tuning in.